So I would start with, why is Arbeit called work, called labor in English, when in German it's work? And now you have a much bigger problem on your hands, because if you have this expression in German in the above the camps, Arbeit macht frei. This is one reason you would never translate Arbeit as work in English, because it's going to lead you to what is work. And it's going to lead you to the idea, not that work makes you free, because there's a complete falsity that, so I'm not endorsing what was there in any way. But, the whole thing about Nazism is it's a perverse occultism. It knows very well how a human being is organized. It knows very well what it's doing when it turns a swastika around in the opposite direction. That's a very, I don't want to dwell on it, but it's very important that for Nazism to work, they had to reverse the swastika. It's not without, it's a perversion of truth, put it this way. So I'm not endorsing, I'm just drawing attention to this, because otherwise one could say fairly freely, work for the human being is essential. If the human being cannot find him or herself by what he or she does, by the work we do, we will not find our human dignity. So it's very important that people work. So this is already very delicate. They need to work in order to be free in a certain sense. And I'm going very carefully here. Free of their suppositions, free of their false assumptions, free of not projecting onto the world how they would like to be perceiving what's in the world, free in a certain economic sense. And also having their own authenticity, their own, I always come back to my biography. I made myself dependent on what I did in the world for my revenue, right? For everything I did, right? For not going to school, for not getting trained, for not taking on a mortgage, all these things. I said, okay, let's see where I go with all this freedom I've got. And then you come into a kind of conversation with the universe. It's not just a question of saying, I'm not doing this and not doing that. I found myself very lucky, because when I left school and all the training that came with school, what my parents saw was, oh, nice for him. He's sailing around the Mediterranean. What a wonderful life. I think they thought, why doesn't he get a proper job? But okay. But when you sail around the world and you're, around the Mediterranean or whatever it was, and you're 17, 18, the sea is a very powerful teacher. So nobody could see the training I was getting by being at sea.
Yeah.
Right? For being in a medium which has no boundaries. When you're out at sea, you don't see land anymore. So you have to, and you can't control the waves. And there's always the ninth wave, which was bigger than the others. And so you never get to relax when you're at sea, because all the multiple independent variables all around you. So for me, although I left school, I went into very powerful training, right? And I got paid for it. So that was, I got to see the Mediterranean. So I'm not complaining, but I didn't leave school and just go, and smoke spliffs on the beach. That's not what I did. I trained myself in a certain way, so that I got past the experience of saying to be free is just to say, I'm cut my school time, get out of here and be done, right? That was half of it. The other half is, okay, now take responsibility for your actions. And so for me, these two things go together. And why I'm saying this, I've lost my plot a little bit, is because out of this kind of experience, for me, work means sort of human activity. What am I going to do with my life? That's, you can say, you're young until you're 20 or something. Then you start working, you have your work life, and then you retire. There's a lot of sense in this. And in Steiner's terms, until you start your career, you are a pure consumer. You're just a student costing money. And when you retire, you're another pure consumer, right? And we have only the work life between 20 and 65. All the wealth is going to be created there, and it has to carry these other bits. This is a social security concept. But even allowing that, there's a certain truth between 20 and 65. Then you can do stuff. You start your career and then you complete it. So however we describe that, it's simply true in human biography, more or less, that you come upon what I would say you come upon what you've come to Earth to do, and now you have 40 years to do it in. Then you can relax and look back on what you did and go emeritus. So if you have that image, so what does work really mean? It means that I discover what I've come to do in life, and then I have to get clear, do I have the skill set to do this? So if I'm going to be an economist, what do I have to learn to do this? So I had to learn to build houses. I didn't go to an economics class. So anyone can say, what skill set do I need to carry out what I've come to do? And is it understandable what I'm trying to do? Is the pricing right? There's a whole lot of things you have to do in order to do what you came to do. And often you get, again, this is a business experience I've had, never go with your second hunch. So I learned this in business. You have a hunch. The first thing the bank says, well, I wouldn't do that. I would do this. Never trust the banks because it's not his business. It's not his biography. It's mine. So you have to stay with your hunch and take on board his comment and take that into account and stay with your hunch. You must never let go your instinctive sense of why you're on the earth. If you lose this, you've lost everything. So you don't ignore the world, but you just have to hang in there until it all comes together. The right skill set, the right relation, the right price. I don't know if I've got the right amount of capital in my world. All this is for me, what any human being has to do in order to work. This is what work entails. And in doing this, I am free, or I'm free and responsible to do what I've come here to do. And for this, I don't, yes, I needed parents, otherwise I wouldn't have got here, right? Or I needed the skills that came through my inheritance, if that's real. There's all sorts of, yes, I need to go to school to learn all sorts of things. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to function. So I get all this. I'm not knocking it, but I learned English in order to become a poet and push the boundaries of English, for example. So this I get, and then this for me is the starting one. To be truly human, you have to not just work. You have to find why you're on the earth, and you have to organize your life so you can achieve this before you retire. This is a hugely complicated and important topic. And we can go into all sorts of things, the difference between 20 and 28 and 35. And there's all steps along the way which help you to make this possible. And so then when you've got that clear, this will bring you up inside of what labor is referring to as the concept in economics. It has no consciousness that it's referring to this, because it's made the assumption somewhere along the line, this is a commodity. But I'm trying to say it in such a way that you arrive at, you say, well, labor cannot possibly, or all this cannot possibly be a commodity. So I'm just trying to characterize rather than define, so that I don't get rid of the term labor. I'm just trying to understand what it might mean if we just dig around inside it a bit. And that's the first one. And then it's obvious if I'm going to do what I've come to the earth to do, that's kind of my language, then I'm going to need the resources to do that. I'm going to have to be very clear why I'm doing it. So just in order to work successfully and therefore to be human, I need some idea which is going to take the form of capital. I'm going to need some idea which I will need to have this capitalized. And I'm going to have to be clear what resources I'm going to command to do what I want to do. And so for me, the whole economic life comes out of the nature of the human being. Then I will go into the area of so-called capital, and I will go into the area of so-called land or nature, natur. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense where this is coming from. And so you can get a sense of how I come upon these three terms, land, labor, and capital, or labor on one side, I have capital, on the other side, I have land. That's in order for me to be human, I must work. And for this, whatever I do in life, it could be just the simplest thing. Say like being I'm thinking of a youth course I did once, and this youngest girl said, I'm only ever going to sell McDonald's. I'm not going to do anything else. And don't pretend for me that I am. I don't have a problem with doing this. I'm clear where I am. And another friend of hers said, I'm going to be a specialist lawyer in marital divorce problems, which said everything about her parents, but really that's what she was going to do. And they were very clear. And they didn't want me to say we're all going to be whatever you think we should be. Just trust to our biographies. That's how I described it. And so if you have this, then whatever your scale or situation is, everyone is implicitly, there's a certain amount of capital belongs to this person, and a certain amount of land is needed for this person to be resourced. And that means that person will define the allocation of capital and labor and land, nothing else. No price mechanisms involved in what I've just said. What's going on is karmic specification is what is going on in what I've just said. Destiny precision, things which, I'm right up there in the quadrant of angels as far as economists are concerned. What is he talking about? And I said, just trust me, it will manifest as what you call labor, land, and capital. I've just put them in a slightly different order. But I haven't used words you don't know. I've just made a mess with your head, because you don't normally make these connections that I'm making. And I say this because a lot of people in Steiner's world don't like it when I say land, labor, capital. And I say, well, if you can't make this journey, if you try and say nature, spirit, and work, you've lost your economist. You can say that all you want, but you've got to build a bridge from there to here that they can also cross.